Welcome back. I'm Vanessa Roberts of Federal News Network, and I'm talking with Kim Denver of Leidos about how he and his team have been maturing contracts management at Leidos. So, Kim, let's dive back in.
Okay.
Have you seen your team's ability to manage compliance and risk evolve as its contracts and operations have matured?
I have in several ways. I think earlier you heard me mention about people, right? I think when people think of compliance, they think of compliance as almost a tripwire, right? It's black and white. It's not gray. If you're truly addressing compliance, besides being aware of what the expectations are of the government, one, you've got to have a consistent, continuous relationship with your regulators. You know, you're in that regulated environment. But what you would think is a tripwire, a black and white situation, often requires collaboration between the government, its regulators, or even the customers to discuss the issues that exist with what might look like a compliance issue. The greatest movement, there's two things that I would say happen. The greatest movement is making sure your people are developing those skill sets, those interpersonal skill sets, those relationships. And when I talk about relationships, I actually say I want genuine relationships. I don't want relationships, for an end. I want relationships that, as I said, contracts is a relationship business, and especially the value add one. And so you've got to be able to have relationships. So the uplift I've first seen is in the people, right? In educating and understanding it's okay to broach conversations and try and reach a solution for both parties. And a lot of times that really depends on, and we've had a lot of great success with our customers and the contracting officers. Your more seasoned contracting officers are comfortable understanding the roles that they have, the flexibility that they have, the authority that they have to arrive at a solution that is in the best interest of the government, but remains also in the interest and is equitable to contractors.
Yeah. You mentioned at the Army, you had 8,000 people working for you. But one of the things I think people don't realize, it's still a small contracting environment, really, right? It's not as many people as there are. It's still a small community. People do interact and know one another, and those relationships really do matter, right?
They do. What you'll find is it's a small community. If you were talking to the government, rightfully so, that was just for the Army, having 8,000. If you consider what was going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and the other agencies that were supporting it, was not just the Army. It was a huge part of the Air Force as well, so there was a lot of collaboration there. But it all would tell you that there were still challenges with having the right number of personnel to be able to execute. And so the challenge in that environment, it's a small community, and we share ideas across, right? So I think that's one of the benefits of me having come from the government and industry, has been this ability to connect industry to other thought leaders, to other decision makers inside of the government, and push that at all levels. When you think of an organization inside the government, you got people who are on the front lines working the issues, and then you've got senior leaders. All too often, I think people forget about the real decisions are made in the thing I call Middle Earth. That's where the decisions are being made. Sometimes it's appropriate to punch high up. Sometimes it completely decreases your efficacy. And so you have to understand where in the organization to work that. The more that you engage in this network, this small network that you talk about, the more ideas you get, the more well-known you are, and your reputation is understood that this person is really somebody that they understand the profession, they're innovative, and they're presenting ideas in the collective interest.
And that's also why it's so critical, though, that there's a lot of knowledge on the other side, and that you really do understand the federal contracting environment in order to have those conversations, because it is a community, and that community is talking to one another. And so as a contractor, you need to be, alert, astute, understand all the regulations, understand compliance, understand what matters as far as risk goes.
Well, that's a great point that you mentioned. You have to be conversant in those regulations and that compliance. But beyond that, you have to understand what's in the mind on the government side. What is their concern? What's their trigger point? Mm-hmm. And as you begin to understand that, it's about understanding your audience, understanding your customer, and understanding the challenges that they're up against. And what are the things that you can do in the collective pursuit towards a solution that satisfies the challenges that they have internally. So you know when they're putting together a deal that they're going to present or an evaluation that they're going through, the others that are involved, the leaderships that are involved, what they're going to have to convey to demonstrate to their leaders the succinct and material challenges and how we've collectively accommodated that. So it is, in that part, it's very important to understand your audience and what their challenges are. So you're helping them through that, and what you're presenting isn't necessarily self-serving, but is in the collective interest.
Right. Well, let's talk about some more specific things about metrics. Get a little more hardcore here.
Okay.
Talk about how you measure success. Like, how do you know that Leidos is making progress as a contracting organization? What are the things you're looking at, and how are you actually measuring those things?
You know, that was an important initiative I had before I left. Previously, you know, before I came to Leidos, I was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for procurement. I said that the secretary brought me over. And that was one of the things that was missing with respect to understanding how effective we were and what we were accomplishing. So I put in these series of metrics with my team, and they got briefed out quarterly from all the organizations that we had delegated authority to. So it really gave me a good baseline that when I came into industry, what were going to be the metrics, what metrics were needed. When I got there, I saw there were metrics. You know, a lot of organizations have transactional metrics, and that's good for managing the organization, understanding your workload. But I go back to understanding before you create metrics, what is your value proposition? What type of contracting organization are you? And so I mentioned earlier that we're about creating value in every deal and protecting value in every contract. But to understand how you do that, you have to understand how does value come to the company? Besides, it's clearly executing the customer's mission, right? But what are those things? And so for the contracts organization that I lead, and that we continuously talk about, it's about supporting growth, increasing return, and managing risk. And the managing risk is the interesting one because it can support growth or inhibit, right. Or it also could inhibit protecting the value. So the metrics that I have are around those without getting into the specifics, and we track how we do there. We have other metrics that we track with respect to, you've also heard me say that it's a fundamental aspect. If you want to be in contracting, you have to be a relationship person. It just has to be part of you. And understanding that, what's really important is that those relationships are what give you access into being able to have the conversation and work those. So the relationship's fundamental. Understanding what your value drivers are. And when I talk about those value drivers, you talk about supporting growth and such, and I've got examples, you know, okay, what things are we doing with respect to mergers and acquisition? That's supporting growth. It would be inorganic growth, but it's supporting growth, right? And so there are metrics that we have to gauge those particular activities. But we also have metrics around how we're doing with our customer relationships. One of the initiatives that we've employed, and it's been fairly successful, we have a thing we call Value Tracker. And that's a way that I think the contracts organization is so integral to the company. In fact, I will often say contracts is not a support function. We do support,
Right.
so I don't take that away. But we are an integrating function. That contract that comes through, whether it comes through another prime, whether it comes through the government, if you'll permit me to say, it's the lifeblood of the company, and it touches every function. So you'll find many times that contracts is an integrating function.
We're getting close to the end of our
Okay.
conversation, but Leidos is a technology company, and a lot of the things you just talked about are really data,
Yeah.
right? Talk about the technology aspect that supports that other part of the stool, right? People always say the three parts of the stool, right? It's technology, it's people, it's policy. But I'm interested in how your organization really uses technology to help people do their job better, and especially address that issue of risk, because that actually does drive growth, right?
Sure, it does. So again, I can't wage into that without saying, first I start with the people. First I understand my organization is delivering the value proposition, and then the tools exist to facilitate that. The tools, if you don't know those other two parts, or you don't work those other two parts, the tools are just tools, right? And I think that probably applies across all professions. When it comes to technology, Leidos is a technology company. So I think our technology is mature. The areas that we're looking at right now is, because you've heard me say, and I'll say this, contracts is an integrating function, not a support function, although we support. The real challenge becomes, of those tools that we have, how well do they integrate with one another? How well do they facilitate the things that I want to take my most seasoned professionals and put them on the hardest problems, where I can let robotics or AI, ML come in, artificial intelligence, machine language, come in and do the things that can do it so much more quickly, but then leverage my organization and my team to arrive at better solutions and put their value where it's best used. So technology-wise, I think we're high on technology, latest technology. The technology in the contracting environment, there's the contract management part of it, and then there's the AI, ML. At Leidos, as I said, we have both. We're both organic growth, and we've had a lot of inorganic growth, or mergers and acquisitions. And that second part of the technology, AI and ML, contracts are so critical when we're doing due diligence and understanding where risks might exist, what we might do, that once we merge, how do we keep those contracts running, how do we keep those proposals going in, and making the company continue to run seamlessly and not lose the value proposition of acquiring the company. And that's where we're looking for tools that can help take the transactional piece of that to feed information so that the professionals can understand and adjudicate where those risks are, and then we could present them to committees that understand there's a quantification of the risk, and can this be mitigated? Is it something we need to work on? Does it change the value of the deal? Right? It's more that diligence that gives the insight.
And it still allows the people to be front and center in the contracting organization.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's a perfect place for us to end, and I really appreciate you coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Kim, thanks for chatting with me today. I loved being behind the scenes and learning about your contracting organization, so thank you. I'm Vanessa Roberts of Federal News Network. You've been listening to a conversation with Kim Denver, Senior Vice President and Chief Corporate Contracts Executive at Leidos, for our series, Leading Voices in Federal Contract Management. To learn more, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Technomile.